Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Allison Sports Podcast Series. I'm Shane Wynn, joined by my colleague Shane Arman. How you doing, man?
Doing great.
Have you recovered yet? We just got back from Vegas. We've been there most of last week.
Yeah, caught up on my sleep mostly. Work emails, probably a little bit of a different story. So, a
Yeah,
little bit of work to do there, but had some
there
good
was a
food
mountain. Yeah, so let's talk about the week that just was. So, let's get the game out of the way, right? So Mahomes delivers when Mahomes is expected to deliver. I think that's the story, right?
Absolutely. I mean, a nail biter there at the end was a little bit of a boring game, mostly throughout.
Yeah.
You and I were kind of agreed on that, but it was fun to see some fireworks at the end, at least.
I think it was good in the fact that it was a nail biter, right? Sometimes these Super Bowls, they're blowouts, right? And by the third quarter, you're like, nah, whatever. But I watched the whole game and, hadn't been to overtime in several years, I think since maybe 2017. So, great ending to the game for sure. So at that point, I kind of felt either team could have won the game. But it is the end of the NFL season, and we just spent 2 full days on Media Row at the Super Bowl in Vegas at Mandalay Bay, their convention center, which was one of the host hotels for the NFL. And I want to dig into that, but maybe for people that don't know what Media Row is, or the Media Center, which is now what they call it, maybe you can give people a little bit of an idea.
Yeah, absolutely. It's basically a massive open expo center, and we consider it to be the largest single concentration of sports media in one single place at any time throughout the course of the year. So you have table after table lined up in rows, just like the name indicates, right? So probably 200 different media outlets, everything from radio to television to podcasts to digital media outlets. Any of the biggest sports publications that you've probably read stories in have a presence there, and they're doing interviews all day throughout the day from 8:30 in the morning to 5 p.m. And you're gonna bump into some pretty famous athletes and celebrities if you find yourself at Media Row, and it happens the entire week before the Super Bowl, so Monday through Friday, right before the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's an amazing opportunity for brands to be able to do something meaningful in front of a sports audience if that audience is valuable to them. And for those who don't know how this really works, mainly what happens is a brand gets paired with an athlete that's relevant, which usually means an NFL athlete, either current or former, because they've got credibility to talk about what's going on. They can talk about predictions for the game. If they're a current athlete, they can talk about how their season went. This is all content that the sports media are looking for. But then there's a bit of a quid pro quo, right? Where a player is endorsed or is endorsing a particular brand, maybe for a service or a product they're there for, and they're there to talk about that as well. And that's where the brand has an opportunity to get the exposure that it's looking for. So, in a way, everybody wins. And we went out there supporting 2 clients, very different clients too, the Special Olympics, which is a global partner of ours and has been for several years, and GE Profile. But I want to talk about Special Olympics first. So why don't you give folks a view into what we were doing out there, what we were announcing, who we were working with?
Yeah, so Special Olympics paired together Denver Broncos linebacker Alex Singleton with Special Olympics athlete Vince Egan, who's also a health messenger. And their campaign was built around this insight that actually 60% of Special Olympics athletes are considered obese. And so for the first time in the organization's history, they launched a nutrition campaign that was called Snack Zone as part of their School of Strength platform. And this is really all about how you can improve your performance by making healthy snacking choices. So Alex and Vince were paired together for all of their interviews and pointed people to content that they could get about portion sizes for snacks, choosing the right snacks, and that served as a great sort of foundation for them to support and generate awareness for Special Olympics athletes and just for broader adult healthy snacking.
Yeah, and we did a day and a half with Special Olympics. We must have done well over 24 interviews during that period of time. And what I found really interesting this year with Special Olympics was, there's one component of the work here where we actually pre-book a lot of interviews, and then you've got the schedule when you're on the row where you're here at this table at this time, and then you move to the next table. A lot of the schedule's baked. We always leave a few gaps because there's always going to be media outlets that when you're there say, oh my goodness, Alex Singleton is here. Can we get him on? And then we try to work it out. But we actually landed Vince on the Pat McAfee show, which I think was arguably, right, it's an ESPN show, arguably one of the most watched programs on ESPN or really any sports media outlet in terms of its popularity. And we didn't book him, right? We used our guile, I guess, and our knowledge of the row to make something happen.
Yeah, I mean, the Pat McAfee show is a tough cookie to crack, and if you're working in the communications industry, trying to pitch and get guests on there, just to give you a sense of the level of guests that they usually have on that show, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson showed up about 45 minutes after Vince. Right. We got Vince onto the Pat McAfee show, but just to back up a little bit. We had about 45-minute break on the row, and we knew that the Pat McAfee show was starting to broadcast live in just a few minutes. So we brought Vince over, Special Olympics athlete, to have him stand and be able to not only just watch the show get kicked off, but try to get him in the view of Pat McAfee, who's looking back out, onto Radio Row. We also had Vince wear his medals. So he is a World Games medalist many times over in golf and in skiing. And of course, we brought Vince over there, and Pat McAfee catches a glimpse of the medals. And Pat McAfee is familiar with Special Olympics. So at that time, a producer comes over and is like, hey, can you have Vince stay here? Pat may want to actually engage with him and ask him a question. So we made sure to position Vince front and center there, and we just kind of hung out patiently. And there was also a golfer on the show at that time talking, and at a certain point, Pat kind of brings Vince in. There's a little microphone set up outside of the set. Right. Starts asking Vince questions, mentions Special Olympics a couple times. So we get that hit, and then we actually come back to give Pat a T-shirt, get Vince a photo with Pat McAfee, and then later in the show, Pat holds up the T-shirt and mentions Special Olympics again.
Yeah, it was so cool.
Live on the broadcast. And I think we looked, Shane, and 2 hours after the YouTube had posted, it already had 328,000 views, which is just insane in that amount of time.
Incredible.
And it's probably grown since then. But what a cool opportunity for Vince and for Special Olympics to have that high profile national broadcast opportunity.
Yeah. So we spent a day and a half with them, and then we did a half day with GE Profile.
Yeah. And I love the story of this one, Shane. Why don't you give us some insight into who we worked with and how we ended up finding that talent?
Yeah, this one was fascinating. So GE Profile has been a client of ours for several years, and they do a lot of small appliances and kitchen appliances. A lot of people have GE Profile in their kitchens, and we had just helped them launch what they tout to be the world's first indoor smoker. So if you own a Traeger and you smoke meats, like you make brisket or ribs outdoors, this product provides that level of smoky flavor, but in an indoor setting where you're not going to flood your kitchen with smoke. It's a really cool product, and just took off at CES. And so the client obviously was excited about it, and they realized that this particular product, they had an opportunity to talk to a sports-minded audience, because they're thinking about smoked meats and tailgating and all of this stuff, and it just kind of made sense. And so literally 2 weeks before we hit Radio Row, one of the leads on the account here at Allison came to me and said, do you think we could do something for them at the Super Bowl that would provide value to them? And, immediately the answer was, yeah, we absolutely can. And, I started thinking about, well, geez, this is going to have to come together really fast, because there's this whole idea of contracting with an athlete, right? You need to find the athlete, find if the athlete is available. how much it would cost, whether that's in the budget, does it make sense? Like, is there alignment between who this person is and what you're trying to pitch? All of that came, was right there in front of us. And I immediately said to our account lead, I think I should talk to Mack Hollins. And Mack Hollins, this past year was a wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons. We have a relationship with him originally through Special Olympics. I took him out with me to the Cannes Festival last year to be a part of Stagwell Sport Beach. He did a great job out there. But I also knew a few things about him. And one of the things I know about him is he is a notorious carnivore. Like, this guy, especially during the season, all he eats is meat and fruit. That is it, nothing else. And he talks a lot about it. And so I know his agent really well. And I shot her a note and just kind of pitched her on the idea. And she was like, he's 100% in. So that happened very quickly just because we had the relationships. And then, maybe Shane, you can tell the story of, like, from the actual activation on site, like how we did this, because we literally flipped the script in the way in which media tend to engage these athletes.
Yeah, we had to solve for, not being able to bring the physical device onto the road, but still be able to show off what it could do. So we came up with this idea that we should have Mack actually smoke his own beef jerky, bring that jerky to the row, and let hosts and producers taste firsthand what this product can do. And what that also did for us is, as you mentioned, Shane, in the typical interview flow that happens on Radio Row, a lot of times it's football, right? The first 7 to 10 questions, first maybe 7 minutes of that interview are all about the NFL, and then they kind of backload it with 1 question or 2 questions about the brand. Well, in this case, we sat down and immediately gave people this smoked beef jerky that Mack Hollins made in the GE Profile Smart Indoor Smoker, and that then became the front end of the interview, hence the flipping of the script, and that really allowed us to set the stage for all of these interviews. Meanwhile, we're giving delicious beef jerky, which always helps as well.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever experienced the row where so much of the conversation with every media outlet was about the product that the athlete was there endorsing. Like, there was just so much conversation, to the point where I think this is worth sharing with people. So literally the first interview that we did with Mack, one of the guys was so enamored with the jerky and the idea of the product that we're leaving the table and he says to us, I'm getting this product, which is kind of cool to hear, right? So we leave this table, we go to another interview, and then we come back that way because we've got to go to a third interview that's right near where the first one was. And as we're walking by, this guy that said he was going to buy the product literally holds his phone up and says, look, I bought it. And he's showing us the receipt from having purchased it. So literally, Mack Hollins helped GE Profile sell one of those devices within minutes of doing an interview, which is just, like, it's insane. Like, you just don't see that kind of impact typically from PR efforts, but in this case we did.
Yeah, it was very cool to see. And the jerky was just a massive hit. There were hosts that, after the interview was over, they were like, so wait, how did you make this? Like, tell me a little bit more about this. Like, this is just a phenomenal product. So it was quite a bit of fun. Probably one of the coolest, if not the coolest, activation, if you will, that we've done on Radio Row.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, too? You mentioned that Mack was the one making this stuff. So we had a unit shipped to him in advance so that he could get his head around how this thing functions, and Mack is really awesome on Instagram, and he actually produced a really solid several pieces of content literally showing the process and walking people through just how easy it was to do it. And so when he hit the row, he was really knowledgeable about the product because he'd already had it in his hands. I think that's another, not lesson learned there. Like, you and I know this, but, I think that, sometimes we forget that authenticity sometimes comes simply through product awareness that comes from having the product yourself and being able to use it, kick the tires on it.
Yeah, totally. No, I think that's a great point.
All right. So 2 days of NFL Media Center, as they're calling it now. Any final impressions on Vegas? This was the first Super Bowl week ever in Vegas.
There's just so much going on. You had a live golf tournament. There was an F1 race. I mean, it just was this. I mean, we obviously left, before the weekend, but I'm sure it was just one massive party over the weekend. A lot of different parties happening. So, but it was great. The stadium is right there. It's got plenty of hotel rooms, as we talked about, and I would imagine that the Super Bowl is definitely going to be back.
Yeah, I think it was incredible. I mean, the one thing Vegas solves for, if anything, is inventory of hotel rooms. It's so nice to not have to schedule a hotel room 6 months in advance. So I'm sure that it's going to be a regular hit over the years moving forward. So, all right, well, that was 2024 Media Center at the NFL for Super Bowl week. We had a great time. I'm excited to do it next year again with hopefully even more clients. And we will not be talking about the NFL for a little while, but you got the combine coming up, you've got the draft coming up, and then I'm sure we're going to be talking about it at Stagwell Sport Beach in June in Cannes for a second time, because it's NFL offseason, which means those players are available, and who doesn't want to be on the beach at Cannes in June? Thanks, everybody.
Right. Thanks.